Welcome back to Cinema Crudités, a side project of Craft Services. What is it? Qu'est-ce que c'est?
It's films that we've watched
Yeah.
that we want to talk about.
Yeah, I don't know if
wanna
these
nibble
necessarily fit into... Good one.
Yeah.
A little carrot?
Yeah.
I don't know if these fit necessarily into the mission statement of Craft Services, which is to bring to you a new look at films that didn't possibly get a good look or the right look the first time around, but
Right.
It's more just a cinematic appreciation
I would agree with that.
for things that are maybe overlooked. If you're not looking right at it, if you're looking altitude's too high or too low,
Yes.
maybe they're going to come into here.
Yeah.
And we talked on our first episode of this about medium cool.
Yes.
And this isn't supposed to be a series where we only do films that start with the letter M.
No.
But the film we want to look at today is the movie M
Yes.
from 1931,
Mm-hmm.
which we checked out recently at the Trilon Cinema,
Yep.
which is a fantastic local cinema
Mm-hmm.
that presents rare historical artistic films
Yes.
as well as trash. Cult's the right word.
Cult stuff. Yeah, for sure.
And if they want to sponsor us, we're right here.
Yep.
But anyway, 1931 ostensibly is when M came from, was released in Germany,
Mm-hmm.
and directed, of course, by Fritz Lang,
Yes.
written by him and his then wife, Thea von Harbau. And it tells the story, well, I don't know, you tell me what it tells the story of.
M is a story of a children's serial killer.
A murder.
Yeah.
Oh, he's got a Sauron and a ring?
Well, no.
No, that's the wrong kind. But you can see where
Yes.
Tolkien got that from.
So he's killed quite a few children, and the cops are getting fed up. But not only the cops are getting fed up, the criminal gangs are getting fed up, and the criminal bosses have met together and have decided that they need to catch the murderer. So it's a lot of criminals from different walks of life who get together and work together with the beggars of the city to capture this criminal,
Yeah.
this no good who is ruining business for them. So that's the story in a nutshell.
Yeah. And it takes place in Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically, I'm assuming, I'm not too familiar with styles, and it's hard to tell from their clothes and stuff like that, but
Right.
I guess it's just contemporary.
I think it is contemporary.
Yeah. A lot of smoking.
Oh my gosh, there's a ton of smoking in this movie.
Yeah. And
Like different kinds
creative
of implements.
smoking. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you made this again today, it would be smoking, vaping,
Yep.
vape clouds.
Uh-huh.
But in this film, you've got guys smoking cigarettes, smoking a cigar, smoking a pipe, sticking the cigar in the pipe.
Yep.
Taping 3 cigarettes to a cigar.
Right.
And smoking it. Smoking it out of your ear, under your hat.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's called, but they have these little like triangular paper things that some cigars are in, and like they're triangular, like but cylindrical, and
The
there's,
Toblerone cigar?
maybe
Oh, yes. The famed Toblerone cigar.
yeah. But there, at one point, there's a beggar who is looking at his collection of cigarettes
Right.
and cigars, and
Yeah.
like they've been smoked to different lengths and that sort of thing.
Right. Well, I don't think that he smoked them. They're all
Right.
recovered.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
it's a scene where it's like the beggar center scene or whatever, where we go through all the things that the people have, collected in their work.
Right.
You see it earlier on when you go to the injustice gang of criminals, and
Mm-hmm.
they're all doing their things in the pocket. The pickpocket's got like 7 pocket watches that he's laying out. But later on, we get the guys like, I got this sandwich, and I got this sandwich, and I got this sandwich.
Right.
And then the guy's like, oh, I got all these cigarettes. Here's a good one.
Exactly.
The thing about this film is that it's not overlooked, but I think that it might be overlooked because it's 87 years old now.
Sure.
And people forget and they don't know that this film, coming sort of, at least for Lang, at the end of his time in German Expressionist cinema, gave birth to the procedural, or at least prefigured it as we know it.
Right.
It's not the first serial killer movie. Maybe The Lodger might be Hitchcock's. The Lodger might be the first like real serial killer movie.
Okay.
But it sort of started that. It's an early example of a film noir, which of course was influenced by expressionism, and so so much of what we expect to see in a crime, quote unquote, crime film today, or a serial killer film today, comes from this film. And this was made pretty much like right near the tail end of Lang's time in Germany. He had, worked in the Weimar Republic, and initially the Nazis weren't in power, of course, until Adolf Hitler was elected in 1933, but they were around.
Yeah.
And so he announced that he was going to make this film called Murderers Among Us.
Okay.
That was the original title of it.
All right.
And the Nazi Party immediately came to him and said, "You can't make this film because this is about us. This is clearly about us."
Wow.
He's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. This is about serial killers." And they're like,
right.
"Oh, okay, that's fine. That's cool. Don't worry about it." But he had gotten in trouble in the film before because he had made a film called Women on the Moon.
Okay.
Awesome. Check that out.
Yeah.
And it was all about rockets. And, I think that's actually the film where the countdown comes from. Like, why do we have a big countdown?
For
Obviously,
rockets?
you need to, like, sequence things and know, okay, now we're going to do this, now we're going to do this. But, like, why do we have this 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and then blast off? And it comes from that film.
Oh, strange.
Yeah, because there was no space program back then,
Sure.
but he was positing the space program. Well, that was a little too close to what like the military was working on in terms of rocket science and things like that. So they came to him and they're like, "It's got to go. Can't do this."
So did that film get distributed at all?
It still exists, but it was somewhere, but it was pulled from theaters.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
So he had basically had enough. He also was Jewish on his mother's side, but she converted to Catholicism.
Oh,
so for a while he thought, I think I'm going to be okay here. Like I don't practice. I'm just a German as far as people are concerned.
Right.
But he had been talking to, it's funny because he already kind of wanted to get out. His wife, Harburg, she was a Nazi sympathizer.
Oh, really?
And joined the Nazi Party.
You're kidding.
Yeah, later on in the 40s.
Oh,
and
wow.
so already they're starting to sort of move away from
Diverge.
each other. Yeah. And the Nazis came to him and went, "All right, look, we didn't like the rocket one. Clearly you're trying to get at us with this M movie, but you're a good filmmaker. Want to be the official filmmaker of the Third Reich?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll have to think about that, Joe." And then as soon as Mr. Goebbels left, he's like, "Where's my hat? I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
I got to go."
Yeah.
And he didn't leave immediately, but it's just a scant weeks after that. Like, he basically was off. He went to France and then later on went to America and was like, "Screw this. This is not going to, I don't want any part of this."
No. He was too high profile.
Well, yeah. And he, whether he was really trying to put commentary on the Nazis in his films or not, it just he wasn't going to get to do what he wanted to do and realize his creative vision. And to be honest, this movie, Metropolis, his other films have a lot of social commentary.
Yeah.
So he would have run up against that eventually. Like, once people are getting marched off to the gas chambers, what kind of films is he going to want to make?
Yeah.
He's going to make a film about a regime that exactly. So that just wasn't going to work. And so he took off and went to Hollywood and made some pretty good films in Hollywood. I'm not sure anything ever really reached the level of something like M.
Okay.
Which was very popular, as opposed to Metropolis, which was not very popular.
Oh, really?
It was, we could do that on Craft Services.
Yeah.
But reception was divided and it cost so much money.
I bet it cost
And pretty much bankrupted the, I think it's UFA, the studio that he was working for.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so he had to kind of like scrape things together and beg people to get this movie made, but it worked out really great. You described the plot, but we'll continue to kind of talk about the plot as we go. And of course, spoilers for a 90-year-old movie.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, but it centers around this serial killer played by Peter Lorre.
Yes.
Hans Beckert. And this was Laurie's first major role.
Okay.
Like his first starring role. Before this, he had played mostly comedic roles.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because he's so eerie and kind of creepy looking.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, even later when he would play bad guys, there was still always a taste of comedy to them. Yeah.
Okay.
Hide me, Rick. You know?
Yeah.
Or when he played, what's the character's name? Can't remember the character's name in Maltese Falcon. But
No, I don't remember either.
would you please put your hands in the air? Yeah, yeah. But yeah, and he's. I know this. I was looking for pictures, like old pictures.
Yeah.
And before this, it doesn't seem like. How do I put this? I think he gained weight for the film.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I think we were talking when we came out of the movie about like, wow, that Peter Lloyd blew up, huh?
He's not a small man.
In his Hollywood films, and when random ladies are calling him on the phone to hear about Mad Love,
right.
You know, he's a little svelte little guy.
Yeah.
But he's, you know, big in this.
Yeah.
And I think it fits the character. You get the idea of this overgrown, you know, baby, this sort of, you know, childish kind of man.
Yeah.
That we never really learn a ton about.
No.
And there are a lot of things in this that will become standard for serial killer stories later. Like, why does he write to the police?
Because he's flaunting that they haven't caught him yet. I mean, he's technically writing to the press, but...
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, I think, yeah, right. But but like, does he, you know, at the end of the film, he's got his big thing about how, like, I don't want to do this. And I guess we have to take that at face value, but we never really know if that's just him trying to get out of it. You know what I mean?
I think it is.
Like he doesn't really care. But we see throughout the film that he is at least tormented by needing to do this. He is compelled to do it. And however he feels about it, we don't really know. And it's a level of psychological sophistication that you wouldn't necessarily expect from a movie from the 30s or an early film. So it doesn't really go into it too much, but you are left to kind of wonder about that.
Absolutely.
I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that... Because the film never answers the question, because the cops run in and break up the kangaroo court at the end. I mean, do you think that he should go to jail or be put to death?
It's a really hard question to answer because, I mean, the criminal is posed that if he pleads insanity, then he'll get out with good behavior and start killing all over again.
Which shows a lot of faith in the mental health profession.
Yes,
because what if they cure him and then he won't do it?
Right. But, I mean, I think that is a definite fear. Like, what if he goes back into society? So maybe he, at the very least, should be in prison for the rest of his life, if not killed.
Well, somebody should check this out.
Yeah. I think that, you know, a serial killer, especially a serial killer of children, that's somebody we want off the street, for sure.
He's based on Peter Curtin, who's a serial killer in Dusseldorf. He was called the Vampire of Dusseldorf.
Okay.
Although Lang says he's not. Let me explain.
All right.
Lang supposedly actually went to a mental hospital and spent 8 days there interviewing patients, and specifically he had talked to Peter Curtin.
Okay.
And sort of got his ideas, you know, and sort of inspirations from that. Later on in his life, he would say that it wasn't based specifically on Curtin, but that there was a lot of serial killers apparently at the time.
Oh,
so,
great.
Yeah. Like Nazi Germany, always bringing great new things to the world. But anyway, apparently there was a lot of like child killings, and this was not like something that would be totally unthinkable for the time. Mm-hmm. And Lang really harps on that. You know, I mean, the movie begins with us seeing this. You know, it's funny because this is Lang's first sound film. Sound wasn't brand new at this point; it had been around for a few years, but it was Lang's first film with sound. And you would see in Hollywood films of the time, you know, even a lot of them would be musicals or whatever, but as soon as we got sound, there was just dialogue. Right. Here's a song. Here's some music. They would just pack it full of all this sound. And Lang is still at this point, he's using it sort of strategically, you know, and he's using it. There are parts where it just drops out and you're just watching something in silence.
Yes.
And if the person next to you
coughs,
is scratching their chin or something like that, you know, you hear it. But it almost makes it you could have nowadays it would be some Hans Zimmer, some kind of like, affecting tone or something from the orchestra, but
Right.
it's almost like the silence is oppressive, when he is walking down the street and he's being stalked by all the beggars, who are
Yes.
coming after him,
Yeah.
and they corner him in the street and he's running from side to side and he's trying to get away and it's just like totally quiet. Or the scene where they call the police in.
Yeah.
And there's just, there's like the sporadic whistles of like a police whistle, and then there's just see like an image that would prefigure what would be happening in
Nazism.
Germany later
Yeah.
on. We see like lines and lines of these cops just coming down the street, and then everybody's sort of like, all the ne'er-do-wells presumably are all trying to run and get away.
Right. And they like raided different places like at night, like the Crocodile Den or whatever, which was full of, like you said, ne'er-do-wells.
Yeah.
And they tried to get out, and then all the cops came in, and there was nothing they could do. And then there was even one guy who was hiding behind the coat rack, and he was trying to sneak out when everybody was preoccupied, but he's trying to sneak out through this window, and there's somebody standing right in his way. Could have been a cop, or
Right.
And like, so he just kind of resigns himself.
Yeah.
and, like,
It was like a coal chute or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just, it was a tunnel that went up to the street
Yeah.
with a grate over it, and there's a cop standing on it. So he's like, and that's a great. That's probably my favorite scene in the film. The inspector Lohmann,
yeah,
who is played by Otto Wernicke, who is like this kind of. He's the kind of cop or the kind of cop character that you can see. Like, he's good at his job, takes it seriously,
Right.
but he's also got kind of a wry sense of humor that helps him get through his, admittedly tough career of like dealing with all these lowlifes. And we don't have to zoom in on this. Do you know what I mean? Like, we could be doing anything else. We could be seeing another child be killed, or we could be following Beckert around as he's, doing something else, or like stalking kids or something. But instead, we go and we visit this class of society. There's something that got me is that we've got Laurie, we've got Wernicke, Gustav Gründgens plays the safecracker,
oh sure,
der Schranker, who, by the way, he was a Nazi.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Laurie also fled Germany when the Nazis came to power. Not really sure about Wernicke, but yeah, Gründgens was, he became the director of the National Theater.
Oh wow.
So he was like, I look like it, I
Yep.
talk like it.
Yeah.
Well, let's get in there.
Okay.
Yeah. Take these gloves off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Put this armband on. But the fact that's really important to Lang throughout the film in a way that makes me wonder, and here I go, I'm going to criticize one of the greatest films of all time. Maybe we hadn't really there's like this moralizing that you get in tales, in films, like, remember, always brush your teeth or whatever it is.
Right.
That you lose by the time you get, well, now especially, but by the time you get to like, like American New Wave or even like 60s French New Wave, where it's like, well, there is no God, or it doesn't matter, or like people just do things, or, people make mistakes, people are slaves to their own, desires, and that's, we're going to look at that. We don't need somebody to come in at the end and go, here's what's wrong with all this.
Right.
And you get that in this film where it's clear that, and Lang does this in a lot of his films, he wants to comment on society, and society is often a character in his films. Like, you look at Metropolis, it's all about like the divide between, it could just be about this rich guy who, well, it's crappy to have to work in a factory and look at a robot, but instead we're with the poor people, we're with the rich people, and it's very pointed at the end when what's his name, like, brings them together, we're going to change this thing. And so we spend a lot of time with those types of people, and it's great because every single one of those characters like has this. The call must have went out to all the theaters in town, community theaters. Hey, can your brother act? Like, because there are a lot of speaking parts in this film for people that you'll never see again.
Right.
They just show up and do a little funny bit and they're gone.
Right.
And it was shot in 6 weeks.
Really?
Well, that was part of the thing where his last two films had been huge and cost a lot of money, and so you get this done fast.
Yeah.
And so having all these this huge cast of characters and having the story told, through each one of those people and not necessarily following, because if this was made today, we'd open on Loman. He would find everything out, and then in the noir fashion, which became de rigueur, at the end of the film, he'd be like, and that's why crime doesn't pay. It's the stuff that whistling in the Mountain King, Hall of Mountain King is made of, or whatever. We'd have to have some kind of commentary. But instead, he goes back to the lady from the beginning.
Yes.
Frau Beckman or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's take care of your kids.
Yeah, I know.
What? Was that what this is all about?
Well, I mean, it is in a way.
If you don't take care of your kids, they'll become pickpockets.
Well, no, I mean, I think it's more like look out for your kids, and
if we all love each other, we won't have these societal divisions.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's like, they were really laid back then about when kids got out of school, they would just walk home by themselves.
That's plot and theme, though. That's what happens.
Yeah,
What's it about, though? What's the theme about?
Well, I think
because he's showing that criminals. He's showing that there's this idea of justice and what's right and wrong in society, and it's all relative. It's a kind of relativism that you wouldn't see in a Hollywood film in this age. Like I just said, the bad guy's got to die, and then the good guy goes, well, he got what he deserved. And you've got all these people who are stealing watches, and they're like, we're hungry. We do this. This is a job. This is my 9 to 5. I do this because, and you get, they're a little scuzzy. You get a character like Franz, who's he's a burglar, and he's breaks into bank vaults or whatever, and then he gets caught by the cops, and he's like, yeah, whatever. You're just going to throw me in jail for a little while. I'll get back out. No problem.
Right.
But it's all about the cops judge the criminals judge the murderer says, you can't judge me.
Right.
And there's even the part at the end when he's at the kangaroo court and he's making his argument, and Lang takes pains to show people in the audience going, yes, I understand what he's saying. I kind of get that. He's saying something that really resonates with me.
Right.
Or however you say that in German.
Right. But there's a lot of other people who are like, kill him, or
they flip on him real fast at the end, which is another thing, that the abruptness of the ending. I like the abruptness, but it leaves all those things unsaid, and there is no good answer for them, certainly. But you're the artist,
right?
You're the filmmaker,
right?
Come up with some answer,
right?
Yeah. Why do they turn on him so quick? Lang supposedly employed real life criminals.
Really?
Yes. You have to remember that this is late 20s, early 30s Germany, so no one has a job.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? So the society at the time was a lot of people pocketing sandwiches and probably stealing watches and stuff like that. And he employed, he just went out and found a lot of people who were, actual street toughs and beggars and stuff, and then put them in the show. And supposedly the police raided the set and arrested 50 people.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I hope it was near the end of the shoot.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's you can't take these people. We got coverage. Okay. Well, I'll see ya. Sorry.
Right. You would think they would sign something. They would be covered,
Well, if he was working for the state, then it would have been fine.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is the rap party at this camp?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't need a shower before the rap party.
Oh my God.
Terrible. Lang was a real taskmaster too. He was famous for being a taskmaster, both in Germany and in America, and it probably hurt him and probably ruined some opportunities for him in America, because you didn't do that
behave like
to Spencer
that.
Tracy.
Yeah.
He famously yelled at Marilyn Monroe on. I can't remember what the film's called, but the film that he did with Marilyn Monroe.
Okay.
Yeah, so like, and he for working with Laurie, he was really rough on him. He apparently threw him down a flight of stairs.
Oh my God!
For that scene at the end where he's supposed to look all frazzled, in the
Disheveled
court,
and everything. Yeah.
And then the scene where just watching it, I was thinking about like, you have this today, but back then you wouldn't just put the double in, and then they fall down the stairs or get thrown into a pile of logs, and then if they screw up and you can see their face, we just CGI it to look like it's Tom Cruise. Right. Nothing against Tom Cruise. I know he does all his own stunts. But,
right, of course he does.
That was you. Now, you probably had some Meisner training or something like that, some Alexander method. You probably could handle physical stuff, stunts. But when they were throwing him, like pushing him down, he's hanging onto the door, and they're like, and then they pull him, they kind of throw him down the stairs, and he's kind of like being tossed around.
Yeah.
That was him. And they did that like 12 times.
Oh my gosh.
And the last time, like, Laurie was just begging him to, like, please, hide me.
I know this is very emblematic of the film, but I really like when the one beggar, like, takes the chalk and makes an M on his hand and then puts it on his jacket and kind of, like, marks him.
Yeah.
I thought that was, that's a really powerful image.
Wait, throwing orange peels on the street.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Oh, is that where Coppola got it from?
Maybe.
The oranges.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a great part. And then, of course, I like how we see the network of beggars that are, tracking him.
Just following him. Yeah.
He walks by the blind guy.
Yeah.
The blind guy. The guy's like, lifts his glasses up.
Yeah.
And the way that sound is used, I mean, people have talked to death about how they use the Grieg, piece as a leitmotif to sort of signify him. Mm-hmm. So we won't beat that to death here. But the way that he uses sound to tell the story, when you've only got pictures, then you show somebody going, hey, what's going on? And then you show the title card, hey, what's going on? You show the other person going, huh, what? But you can get away from that when you can use sound instead.
Yes.
And so, Peter Lorre doesn't have to be on the screen when we're following a little girl who's looking in the shop windows. We can just hear the whistling.
Yes.
Which I've heard two things. I know that Peter Lorre can't whistle.
Really?
And my thing is like, glad you cast him anyway. But first thing you're doing is you're casting a serial killer that whistles.
Right.
You might have not got that part.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Take a whistling class.
Yeah.
I've heard both that Lang himself whistled, and I've heard that his wife whistled as well.
Really?
So I'm going to choose to believe it's both.
Okay.
That she was on set, as the screenwriter.
Sure.
And, honey, get in there and whistle. But apparently he couldn't whistle. But using sound for that, using the part where Elsie gets out of school and she's going to cross the street, and she walks into the street. Normally you would show her walking into the street, then you show a shot of a car coming, and then you go back to her, and then she would jump out of the way, and we see a card that would say, car honks or something, or like, get out of the way.
Right.
But instead she steps in the street, and we hear honk, honk, and she goes, and then boom, a car goes by, which it was going pretty fast.
Yeah, it was.
Stunt actress. That just seems so simple and basic, but that's like the first time that ever happened in movies, or at least one of the first times. Right. And there are so many things in this that aren't, maybe not first times, but are like solid early establishers of things. The movement of the camera, and the camera moved in films before this, but the way that he uses the camera's movement through the scene to help tell the story. We start on the kids singing the song, and then the camera tracks up to the balcony, and the lady comes out, stop singing that song, and then like goes up, and things like that. When the people are all get out of here, the cops are coming, and people all start running up the stairs, and some people go by the camera, and then that one lady, I think it's the prostitute character, like stops, and then the backs of all the police officers come into frame as they push everybody down, and then the camera follows them down the stairway into the crocodile den. Yes. That's, I'm just thinking like Goodfellas. It's like the tracking shot. Right. It's like the kitchen shot in Goodfellas.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's funny because they didn't have like steady cam and all the crazy gimbal stuff that we have now, so you can actually see, like, as you go in, the camera kind of ticks, on its mount.
Right.
It's not quite smooth, but you
Sure.
can just tell that it's like, wow, they really wanted to. This is what we wanted to do with the thing.
Right.
They're pushing the limits of, like, the technology that they've got.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think. What was I gonna say? I don't know.
Murder.
Marking him with an M is kind of like the Scarlet Letter in a way.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
marking somebody, which I don't think that predates this, does it? I don't think it does.
The Scarlet Letter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does?
Nathaniel Hawthorne
Oh,
was
okay.
born a little bit before this movie came out.
Okay, all right. Fair enough. But
the idea of, like, being branded,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he could have done anything. He could have, because how many people are walking down the street with a mark on their back?
I know, right?
But he's like, this is the guy.
I know.
What if he got a really pointed chalk and he wrote, like, a whole paragraph and just slapped it on the guy's back? Because otherwise he might have looked in he would looked in the mirror and, like, seen that, but it was like, oh, it's just a blob of chalk.
Right.
I got to get that cleaned off.
Well,
I'll just keep walking around.
The little girl who was with him, like, she's like, I'll get it off you, mister. And, like, she didn't do such a good job.
No, but also just the dramatic irony of, you dumb bitch, don't do that.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And I think, like, Elsie Beckman, too, like, the thing about her, like, she was just, like, he was like, oh, what a pretty ball you have. And, like, preying on her, vanity and that sort of thing.
These
and then
dummies will die for candy.
And then he asks her what her name is, and she tells him proudly. It's no stranger danger.
Take care of your kids.
Yeah, I know.
It's just weird that's the button.
I know
it is. Film.
It is weird that it ends that way.
The fact that it's a moral like that. If we because the whole thing is we start with that, then we go down into the pit of this criminality. Mm-hmm. Literally, we go down into a pit, a basement.
Yes,
and then we brought back out. We see that there are judges, there are justices that are going to weigh in on this. We don't find out what the verdict is.
No, we don't.
But that's because we pull out again to the mothers of the dead children.
Yes.
And if we just, less is more. Mood spelled backwards is doom, which I think is the same in German. And we just got like that, whatever the law decides, Lohman's got racks up another, solved case. The bad guys are in jail or whatever, but it doesn't bring the kids back.
No.
And they do say that, but it's just, I don't know why it's just like, take care of your kids. You gotta take care of those kids.
I think they're reminding you that there are dead children in this film.
No, I know.
I think that's what they're doing. And yeah, I know. Take care of your kids. So, like, maybe don't let them walk home alone by themselves. Do
you think that the criminals get involved? And it's cool to see them. I don't know if they really care that a child has died. Although
I feel like they do.
They do, but they care because it's cutting into their business.
Yeah.
And this is brought out at the end when they put on this trial. I think it's funny that the criminals, who's the best lawyer? A criminal, a guy who's been in court a lot.
Right.
But instead of just killing this guy, they decide to assemble this court, which is like a dark reflection of a real court. It's almost like they're affected by, they're hunted. They're always constantly worried about having been in jail or going to jail. And so when the time comes for them to, quote unquote, pass judgment on somebody, they assemble a court.
Yes.
Like, why not just drop this guy in the river?
I know.
Be done with it.
I know.
But yet they do that. And so, I think that's just a commentary on the sort of institutions that sort of guide us. And, religion doesn't come into this at all.
No.
But that would have been, I don't think it's a missing leg, but that would be a leg that you could add to the stool. Mm-hmm. A 5-leg stool.
Sure.
Extra stable. If we had somehow brought that in, but it's not brought in. The state stands up for that.
Right.
Let's talk about the best sequence of the film.
Okay.
When he gets trapped in this building.
Yes.
And the criminals normally this would be where, the cops are tracking this serial killer. They've got him. Now they got to get through and they got to get to him or whatever. But instead, it's just this cast of motley characters who are employing their own special talents.
Right.
What does close-up magic guy do? Does he do anything? They never bring that back.
No, they
but
don't.
yeah, and so they go in and they just basically like systematically like go through this building to find this guy.
Yeah, and they do find him. But they're in the meantime.
You gotta lock your storage compartments, people.
Right.
Seriously, if you live in an apartment building, you got a storage compartment, get a padlock.
Yeah.
Otherwise, sometime you're gonna go and get your old college textbooks, and guess what? Peter Lorre's in there.
Yeah, there'll be a serial killer in there. I love it that it's the last one and it doesn't have a lock and it's the last one they check.
Yeah, well, what else was it going to be?
I know. They have to raise suspense somehow. So, like, they, like, break into rooms. Like, they'll, like, they'll not just, like, pick, like, a lock. They will take off a doorknob that has a lock on it and leave a hole in the door.
Yeah.
And then they also were like, okay, let's get into this other office space from above. So they like take like a drill bit and are like hammering it in to make a hole. Yeah. So they can go in. And there's at least one bank in the building and they don't steal any money from it.
No, they're there for one thing.
Yeah, exactly. They're very single-minded too.
It occurs to me too that, you know, they're all very industrious. They all get right to what they're supposed to do.
Yep.
And, you know, the safecracker is there leading the charge, and he's dressed as a policeman.
Yes.
So, again, they're taking on the look, you know, the methods of these people that they're trying to get away from. It's just a neat little parallel. And, again, they use sound in great ways, even to use it, like, to sell jokes, which... It's like that shows a lot of understanding about how this stuff works.
Yeah,
I mean, it's all stuff that has been used on stage, but translating that to film, I think, is showing like what Lang really understood and got about the medium. But when they bring the night watchman in or whatever, and they're like, "All right, how many night watchmen are there?" And he's like, "I'm not screw you. I'm not telling you anything."
Right.
Okay, close this door.
Yep.
And then everybody crowds up, you know, so you can't see what's going on, but they're looking, and then you hear, "Ah!"
Yeah.
Door opens. There's 2 more night watchmen.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so good.
No, it's pretty good. And then I think Safecracker like gives one of the guys a job. You need to like turn this key in like the clocks at a certain amount of time, otherwise an alarm will go off.
Right, a silent alarm.
So you need to go around and do that. And the guy who goes around and does that, I think he was the
pickpocket.
Yes.
Yeah.
From earlier in the film. He hears a sound in the attic and he like gets so excited.
Couldn't do that in a silent film.
No. And he like gets so excited and rushes down all the way down to Safecracker and is like, he's in the attic. I heard him. Yeah. You know? And so then they all go up there and he hears them and turns the light off and then goes and sneaks back into
yeah, but it's not just about hearing. It's he's got his knife and he's trying fruitlessly to because I guess he's locked in.
Yes.
So he doesn't necessarily know that they're right outside or that they're in the building, and he's trying to get out of this thing. And as he's like, you know, working on this, he's trying to flatten a nail to use as a lockpick.
Yeah.
And then he looks up and the doorknob moves on its own.
Yes.
And he's scared. And like people that we were watching it with were like,
yeah,
as well, because it's totally, you know, quiet. It's just totally silent.
Yes.
In a modern movie, again, this would all be scored. You know, we can't let a single second go by that we're not being stimulated, you know, audibly by something. Yeah. Yeah, that was a great part too.
Yeah. And then like you see his face as they go through each locker and they just tear these things apart. I mean, it's just kind of weak older wood, so it's not that hard for them to. It's a lot different,
and it's very similar to now. You go into the storage compartment in my building. It looks a lot like that.
Yeah.
People have chairs and tables and old crap in there.
Sure.
Although it's weird because they're all offices. Nobody lives in this building, so I'm not sure why they're keeping all these old lamps and stuff like that up there. But that's what you'd see in like an apartment building.
Yeah, that's
and then
true.
they go down to the basement of this brewery, which is probably just a building in Germany, to try this guy. And you see the brickwork and the old pipes and stuff like that. It's like, that looks like the basement of my building.
Yeah,
that was built 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Except for the fact that the very European thing, the big sausages. Oh, that's another great joke, too, is when they're trying to convince Franz that the night watchman they tortured died. They're like, hate to tell you, but it doesn't look good. And he's like, oh, no. And they cut to the guy, and he's like, eating some sausages, drinking some beer.
Like his third
he's
sausage
like,
or something.
We don't know if he's going to make it.
Yeah.
But except for, like, the very European sort of elements, the coal pile and beggars and stuff like that.
Right.
You could do this today. I mean, except for, I don't know, cell phones or closed circuit
cell phones
TV or something like that.
Bit.
But you could tell like this story today. It's timeless in that way.
Yeah.
And the way that it uses things that we take for granted now that we still use, but for then were very new. Fingerprinting. They're doing fingerprints. They're doing handwriting analysis.
Yeah.
Which the science of which is disputed today. But back then they even used that to sort of. They have that scene where the guy's basically expositing and he's saying, I think that he's probably like this. And then we, see Laurie for the first time.
Yes.
Doing that weird thing in the mirror.
With his
and
face. He's making himself frown and stuff like that. Yeah. That was weird.
What do you think about him being a werewolf?
Being a werewolf?
I don't think this is necessarily in any scholarship or anything that I've seen. But I was just, as I was watching it, I was thinking like, he's kind of like a werewolf. He's like,
I guess,
got this whole.
He gets an urge.
I can't stop myself.
Yeah.
You stop me before I kill again.
And then he starts whistling, and
the werewolves whistle.
I don't
Whistle
know.
wolves.
Whistle wolves, and like we see him eating fruit, and then he sees the little girl, and he starts like whistling, and it's like he has the urge, and he starts following her, and then she runs into her mother, and then he's kind of beside himself because he had already decided he was going to kill her. And now he doesn't have the opportunity to.
And he howls at the moon.
Yeah.
So, on my werewolf theory.
I don't know. I think he could kind of be a werewolf. Like, he's, like you said, he's feels a compulsion to an urge.
I was thinking, too, about the fact that the criminals kind of get the job done here. But it's not really... I think the Nazis had nothing to worry about because it's not like I don't feel like Lang and his wife are commenting on the inefficiency of the police.
No,
because the police have they crack the case too. They find where he lives.
Yes,
using those procedural investigative techniques, but they're just not. Their plan is just he's got to come home sometime,
right?
And then the criminals have a more active sort of thing. We're just going to go out and get this guy.
Right.
So it's not like he's saying, well, the cops never could have done it on their own.
No, they absolutely
You just
could
have these two forces that are acting independently of each other. And I like Lohman. He actually shows up again in Testament of Dr. Mabuse.
Okay.
There's a kind of Fritz Lang cinematic universe, I guess.
Sure.
He's the Nick Fury. But I like that character, and I also like how we see him use the clues to help solve the case because they find these cigarette butts that the killer smokes, and this has to do with a neat another neat sort of camera technique because he's trying to figure out. I've heard this before. They're called like Ariston or whatever, and he's like Ariston, and as he does it, like the camera pushes in, and he's like Ariston, and the camera pushes in. It's kind of cheesy, but it and then finally it comes from the side, and then we get the full-on shot of him, and he's like, I know what it is. And they pull up this old case file from one of the previous murdered girls, and it's like the same cigarette butt.
Right.
Now it would be the same vape juice canister. I know this guy. Why did they just stake out all the candy shops?
Oh, good question. I mean, they did question them. It was too many. There were quite a few within like a certain mile radius or kilometers, what have you. I think it's interesting too, his letter to the press. he decides to use a red pencil.
Yeah.
Like, why not just use a regular pencil or a pen?
I think
why red pencil shows his like immaturity. Like,
yeah, I think that it has to do. See, that's what I wondered why he writes The Police, because we don't ever really delve too much more into his psychology until his speech at the end. I think that's because I think that's from hell. I think that's Jack the Ripper.
Okay.
Because Jack the Ripper supposedly wrote to the police as well, and he wrote in blood supposedly, or at least red ink.
Oh, okay.
And so I think that's kind of borrowed from that.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else about M?
I don't think so.
Mordor, Uber Alles, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's you've seen it before?
I have seen it before.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
It might be my favorite movie.
Really?
Yeah. It's one of those movies that I find something new every time I watch it.
Okay, sure.
I've seen it a million times, and I was just this last time I saw it, I was really hit by like the blind guy got him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, you want to use a leitmotif, huh?
Right.
Well, guess who's going to get you?
Yeah, I know.
A music fan. And they even have that scene when he's chilling at the beggar's thing, and he got all the balloons are like tied to his table, and he's having a little nosh.
Yeah.
And they turn up the music, and he's like, yeah, I like this music. Good stuff. You know, so it's like we go back to that. We establish like this guy knows his music.
That's right.
And then he hears that whistling again.
Yep.
Although if this guy buys kids stuff, he probably bought a ton of balloons from this guy. How long did it take this guy to figure out that this guy's whistling Grieg? Come on.
Well,
You're going to jail, blind man.
Oh, man.
Who's going to sell balloons now?
Why do you think he marked him with an M? Like, does murderer in German, like, does that start with an M as well?
I think it's, look at the poster. I mean, it's iconic.
It is iconic.
I also think that it's because they had a couple different titles for this thing, and they all got shot down. Like, the Nazis didn't want Murderers Among Us.
Right.
He had a couple other ones, like the murderer looks at you, or something like that, or a city searches for a murderer.
Okay.
And it was probably just, let's call it him.
Yeah.
Let's just call it him.
Right. And then the Nazis won't get mad
Plus,
at us.
we've got this element where this character does this, so let's just do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that makes sense.
I think it's because the M, if you break the arms and you rearrange it, it's a swastika.
Oh my gosh.
And that's what it was. Fritz Lang, Nazi fighter. Fritz Lang always wanted to play with this stuff as well. When he came to Hollywood, he did a film called Fury with Spencer Tracy, and it's about a man who's falsely accused of a crime, and he's locked in a prison, and like the climactic scene is like a mob comes to get him, and they try to burn the prison down to get to him. And I think he wanted to do that as, it's like a lynching thing.
I see.
Yeah. I don't know if he was going to, there is no black actor that was at Spencer Tracy's level back then, so I don't know how they would have done it, but what was Brock Peters up to?
I don't
know. To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah.
But so it's supposed to sort of stand in for that.
Okay. I see.
So he was a poker.
Yeah.
He poked the bee's hive.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He would alternately wear. He wore a monocle in his younger years, and then in his later years, he'd wear glasses and an eye patch over the other eye. Like, I don't know if
did he have bad eyesight?
So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if he was using his left eye was like, this is the eye that I magnify.
Yeah.
Because I guess I'm too cool for glasses. Maybe the other eye was already, it's just like, forget about it. This is no good.
Right.
And then when he got older, it was like, screw it, eye patch.
Eye patch.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But he's definitely a guy who would have been like, I'll wear an eye patch. That would be really scared of me then.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
That's bizarre. And kind of quirky. But interesting for a director, because you need to be able to see too.
Try yelling at Marilyn Monroe with an eye patch.
Yeah, I know.
See what she does then. She got him back though, because her Playboy photos came out like right around the time that movie came out, so that's all anybody talked about in connection with that movie.
Okay.
Yeah, a little targeted publicity will do a lot for your career.
Yeah.
And so it was like, great, just want people to see my movie, and all they want to talk about is
Marilyn
Monroe's tits.
Playboy.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, M. There's a Criterion. There's the one we saw was the 111-minute one, I think. But
Okay.
there is a 90-minute DVD version. But yeah, the full version is in Criterion. You can get it pretty much anywhere. And I would definitely recommend getting it.
I would definitely recommend it as well.
It's very good.
Yeah.
It's very good. Fritz Lang's movies in general are really very good. So definitely check that out. And I guess that's it for now. We'll be back again with something else that is overlooked or underlooked, uberlooked or
Yes.
unterlooked.
Yes.
Whichever one it is. Until then, you can always find more episodes of Craft to Services at crafttoservices.com. On the Just Enough Trope network, justenoughtrope.com as well. You can find us on Facebook at Craft to Services, on Twitter at Craft to Service, no S. And until next time, take care of the kids. You take care of them. Look after your kids.